Hello and welcome to another episode of Atlanta Film and TV's Atlanta Movers and Shakers series. I am your host, Mandisa Johnson. Today we are having a conversation with Elena Miller. Elena has experience working in film, theater, makeup effects, bridal, beauty, as well as fashion and editorial. Hi, Elena. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us. So, we
Yeah.
shared a little bit about who you are. But could you tell us about who Elena Miller is and what it is that you do in the Atlanta film and TV community?
Yeah, for sure. Um, my name is Elena Miller, and I am a makeup and hairstyle. Well, I started as a makeup and hairstylist. I am now officially a makeup artist. I work in the local 798 union as a makeup artist, and I was just inducted into our union last year. And I'm very excited because being a union makeup artist means that the world of storytelling opens up a lot larger in terms of projects and people and opportunities. And so, yeah, I am a makeup artist. I am a storyteller. I am a biologist, actually by education. I have my biology degree from St. Olaf College, and I use that a lot in my makeup, and I use it more than I thought I would. People are like, "How does science have to do with art?" But it's actually a huge, huge part of like what I specifically do because for me personally, I look at people's faces and I don't necessarily see um, maybe what an artist who has a more artistic background sees. I see structure, I see musculature, I see bones, I see, someone's zygomatic arch and the orbitals of their eyes. And I use that and my knowledge of human anatomy and physiology to really give me a good idea of how I want to then paint their face or make their face look different if I'm trying to, do prosthetics or adjust any type of their um, structure or anatomy, which, is always fun to do when you're playing characters. And one of my favorite things to do is to work with an actor and a director that will allow me to really be creative with that and kind of make it our own and not necessarily want them to look like themselves. I want them to become their character.
Wow, biology. I never knew that.
Yeah.
And I never thought of like biology and like being able to use that with makeup, but you explained that perfectly. I was gonna ask you like how, and I'm glad you like explained it because I'm like, well, how? But wow, that's so interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I do learn a lot about a lot from like the people that I interview, and I'm learning that from you now. So, can you take us on your journey of how you started to where you are today?
Of course. So I'm trying to think how far back to go. I guess, I mean, if we're starting with my love of biology, it really began my sophomore year of high school. I attended St. Paul Academy in Summit School in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I grew up in Minneapolis. And I have always been really intrigued by the sciences. And I, for a long time, thought I was going to be a doctor, a neurosurgeon,
Oh,
actually. I've always been really interested in the brain. I have lived with ADHD my entire life, and I've always been really curious about why my brain works differently than a lot of other people's. And so I made it my mission to, find everything I could about my brain, my body, why it worked the way that it did, why it didn't work the way that my friends did, because it made my education a lot more difficult.
mhm.
And I think that that ultimately is what drove me to getting interested in biology in the first place. And I had an incredible, incredible biology teacher in high school. Her name was Miss Barsky. She was fantastic, and she really inspired me to like keep going with it. So then when I graduated from high school and I was going to go to college, I was looking at good biology programs because again, I thought I was going to be a doctor, and so I wanted to stay close to home. And my mom was also an alumni of St. Olaf College, which is in Northfield, Minnesota, which is about 45 minutes south of the Twin Cities. If anyone, doesn't know Minnesota geography, and it's in the same college town as another school called Carleton, but don't let anyone tell you any different. St. Olaf is the better one. Um, Not that I'm biased or anything, but we are way cooler. And Yeah, they had done some really cool renovations on this building, Regents, which is where the science classes and labs are all kept. And it was beautiful, and there's gorgeous windows. And I was just like, oh, yes, I want to go to St. Olaf. I want to be in this building. I want to get my degree. I want to be a doctor. And the whole thing, I would planned out my whole life, of course, as we do as teenagers, because we think we know what we're doing.
Right.
And I did that, and I remember the very first week of college, and I literally planned out my entire 4 years of college in that first week. And I was like, these are the classes I have to take. These are the paths I need to do. These are the extracurriculars I want to do. These are the clubs I want to join. I was a very over involved child too. So I've always just been very much like, go do it, get it done. Let's keep going. Like, there's a goal. Let's move towards the goal. What do we need to like? Surprisingly, for having ADHD, I'm very organized because I have to be. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, it's just chaos. And so that's one thing I've learned through my life, is that like I love making lists. I love keeping an organizational binder. I love having color coordinated things, because otherwise for me, my whole world would just fall apart. And so anyways, I got my classes all ready. I knew exactly what I was supposed to take, from bio 1 to biochem, which ended up being a disaster. But I was like, cool, these are all the classes. This is when I'm going to study abroad, and also just like telling myself, like, yeah, you're going to get into these. Like, this is going to go well. And I just had no qualms. This was my plan, and we're going to stick to a plan, and it's all going to go well. As you know, plans never go the way that
Right.
they're meant to. So surprisingly, I took no art classes. I've never taken like an art class in my entire
Wow.
life. I've never pursued art. I've been
Wow.
always a pursuer of science. And so I didn't take like drawing, I didn't take sculpting, I didn't do any of that in high school, I didn't do any of that in college. I didn't even take art history, which is
Wow.
crazy because I love history. My mom to this day is like, girl, why were you trying to be a doctor? Like, you were meant to tell stories. You should have been like, and I was involved in theater. I was a huge theater kid. I went to theater camp from the time I was like 6. I've always loved performing. I've always loved storytelling. And so it didn't make any sense to my mom that I was trying to get a biology degree and not get like a history and theater double major. So I had no idea that this is where my life was going to end up, but I'm so glad I did. And I'm so grateful that I did go through the hardship of trying to get a biology degree, because it proved to me that I can really do anything. And I really struggled and suffered during some of those classes. I mean, I freaking failed my first round of organic chemistry. I had to retake that class. Anat and phys was better, but hard. Ecology was weird. I didn't want to be in that class. And then by the time I got to biochem, I straight up just failed. So it was just like the whole situation was just like a very like I kept like, if the universe was trying to stop you from making decisions, that is what it was doing. And it was telling me, don't do this, don't be a doctor, don't go to med school. And
Mm.
it took me failing the MCAT, well, not failing, but just getting a very low grade on the MCAT twice. And also, the first time I took the MCAT, there was a literal snowstorm because I had to
Oh,
drive to North
wow.
Dakota to take it. And I was like, somebody doesn't want me to take this test. Like, somebody is telling me, like, turn around, go home. You are not meant to be a doctor. And I just couldn't, not, I was so stubborn. You couldn't tell me anything. And it was frustrating because if I was like really bad at it, I think I would have failed sooner and quicker. And I think I would have gotten the message in my head faster. But I kept being decent. I kept being mediocre. I kept being okay. I kept getting C's and B pluses and B minuses, and I kept scraping by. And I think that was not necessarily damaging, but I almost feel like if I would have gotten a D faster, or if I would have been told, like, hey, maybe do what you're good at, like, try something different, I think I would have been pushed back into theater. I would have found my history. I would have been a lot happier in college because I was kind of miserable because I was studying so hard.
Mhm.
Um, but I had such a drive and a tenacity and a desire to really do this. And I think kids too are taught that like the only option to be successful is like to be a doctor or a lawyer
Oh my
or a,
gosh.
you know,
Yeah.
police officer or a firefighter. Like our world views are so small when we're kids that being a makeup artist for a film and television was never on my radar. So I had no idea that this was an option, and so it just didn't calculate for me. Um, and I think that that's why, like, I just ignored it. Like, I didn't take art classes. I didn't learn how to sculpt. You know, I wasn't enthralled with horror movies either. Like, my family grew up watching musicals and, like, going to the Guthrie and, you know, embracing all these other artistic things. But for whatever reason, I didn't get that through my head in terms of what I wanted to do. And the other class too, the biopsychology class I took, got an A in that class. And I was like, I'm meant to be a doctor. Like, I am genius. I'm amazing. Like, I am so smart. I'm gonna cure like ADHD, which, you know, is not a thing. And like, you
Right.
can't cure ADHD, you know, incurable. But I was just like on top of the world after getting such a good grade. I don't even remember if it was an A actually, but it was like a good grade. I think I got like a A minus or a B plus. It was really good and I was really happy. And I remember, and that gave me so much confidence. It got me through the next semester. And it was just like doing that um drove me to like just absolute like a work ethic I have never experienced since. I was just such a hard worker. And then of course, when you work that hard, you burn out. And
Mhm.
so what happened was after I took that MCAT twice and I burned out, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm so tired. I don't know if I could do another 8 years of this. I don't know if I want to do another 8 years of this. This is a lot of schooling. This
Mhm.
is my brain hurts.
Yeah.
And so I decided to give myself a break for once in my life. And I cut myself some slack. And I remember I had a lot of personal things happening in my life too. And it was a nice kind of natural progression. I moved home. I got a job working at Dick's Sporting Goods as a apparel associate um, around holidays. So it was perfect. Everyone needed help. And so, you know, it was pretty easy for a college grad to get a job in a minimum wage position. And so I did that. And then I wanted more money. I wanted more something. So I also right across the street from because I was working in Minnetonka at the time, which is a little western suburb of Minneapolis, and there was an Ulta Beauty right next to the Target. And I was like, I kind of like makeup.
Mhm.
I've never been like I when I was a girl, I didn't like, you know, watch my moms do makeup. My moms were I was raised by these wonderful two lesbian Caucasian women, and they grew up in the 70s and were burning bras and, you know, revolutionizing their peers and being badasses. And so my moms weren't exactly like pro makeup when I was a kid. And I remember too, like if I would wear eyeliner or something or mascara to school, they'd be like, "Really? Like that's the look?" And I'm like, "It's the early 2000s. Everyone's doing this. Like we're all like, and we're talking like the like smudged black and like
Right.
you know, it was a vibe. We had no idea what we were doing. We were all trying to be Avril Lavigne. Like it was, you know, that was the moment. And so I was trying to fit in. I was trying to be emo, like everyone else was being emo. And
Right.
I remember my mom's just being like, "You look like a raccoon. Like you have like such dark black eyes. Like your eyes are already small, which they are, and like my features." She's just like, "You have gorgeous features. Why are you trying to make them smaller?" And now as a makeup artist, I'm like, "Wow, that was really dumb of me. Like that's not at all what I should have done. That's not at all what would have made my face look better." But whatever at the time. And so yeah, my moms were never just like, you know, I remember buying my first eyeshadow palette for like prom or something and being like, how do I do this? Like looking at the colors and being like, there's four here. where did they go? And this was pre-YouTube. This was pre-TikTok. This is pre-Instagram. This is pre everybody helpful.
Mhm.
This was all we had was like magazines, and this wasn't even that long ago. Like I'm only 30. So like the fact that the internet has changed so much in such a short period of time is crazy to me. But I remember watching like the OG YouTubers, the OG beauty YouTubers like Michelle Phan.
Mhm.
And Michelle Phan taught me how to do makeup. And I remember sitting in front of my laptop and like what I loved about her tutorials was that she would describe a look, but then she wouldn't necessarily tell you what brand to buy. She would just be like, use any type of brown eyeliner to line your lash line and then grab a mascara that's black or brown, whichever you prefer. And it was how she would describe it. She wasn't trying to push product. She wasn't trying to make it
Right.
commercialized, which I
Mhm.
think is so different than today. Now it's like you need this very specific
Oh my god.
like
Yeah.
blush from Giorgio Armani or you're not going to be successful. And it's like,
Right.
bro, I can't afford a $62 blush from
Right.
Armani,
Yes.
but I can get one from Nick. I can go to my drugstore and I can pick up, a Burt's
Mhm.
Bees, whatever is available. But I think that was what was really cool about the early YouTube days was that it wasn't so like product based. It was more about artistry.
Mhm.
And there were certain people that were really leading the charge in that. And she was one of them. And she was also being an Asian woman herself. I thought that was really unique and cool because, she had such a different eye shape than even I did, but she would describe it in a way that would allow people who had all different types of eye shapes to learn how to do their makeup. And she would try to describe, like, if you have more oval eyes, you can do this. Or if you have this type of eye shape, you can do this. And I was like, that's so cool. I want to
Wow.
learn that. And so she taught me how to do makeup. It's just by watching her doing YouTube. And then after I started learning, I remember buying my first naked palette from Sephora, and then it was just all downhill. I just like couldn't stop. Everything looked so pretty. It was fun. It was collectible. It was dopamine hitting and serotonin hitting every time you got to hit add to cart and going to Ulta. And then so when I got my job at Ulta, I was like, this is great. I can justify all my spending. I have a job that now will allow me to, do my makeup every day, embrace my curiosity and my artistry and my creativity. And it will actually, won't cost as much because I have a discount. So that was
Mhm.
my thought process. It was, I just want to be able to buy things for cheaper. Um, and so I started at Ulta and I worked as a cashier and I built my way up to being a Lancome counter manager very quickly. 2 years is all it took. Um, I was really good and I've always just been really good at selling myself, my product, whatever you need. I was the top salesman in my Brownie Girl Scout troop. I, brought in the most money for UNICEF in October every year. You give me a fundraising job and I will earn you money.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm very good at that. I don't know why or how. It's just in my personality, it's in my DNA. I can become very passionate about something if someone teaches me about it. And then it's like, there's no stopping me. So basically, those skills have provided me to be very successful in my industry and have gotten me to where I am because at the end of the day, it is a business. And I think a lot of artists don't remember that there is so much of this world that it's just money reliant as much as
Mhm.
it sucks. But it's important because we all need to get paid at the end of the day. We all have to, pay our rent, our mortgages, and buy food. So this is a very long-winded way of saying like this was the how I got from point A, how I became a sophomore in a biology classroom to, how I ended up being a makeup artist in the film and television industry. But yeah, my path was very like up and down and backwards and but at the same time, it wasn't. I think that everyone's path is, the path that they are meant to have.
Mhm.
And mine just happened to be a lot of like weird detours. I did a lot of like, I did a lot of this. But I'm very grateful for the path that I took because I don't think I would be the artist I am today if I didn't have a biology degree. And it sets me apart from other people. There's not very many that I have personally met. I would love to meet more because I think it's a cool thing to do and to be good at and to just be knowledgeable of how you know, how blood spurts, how bruising works, why bruises change color over time, what causes a bruise to form? Is it an impact? Is it a blunt object? Is it, how is this person being hit? Which arm are they being hit with? These are all factors that when you're actually choreographing a scene, you need to you know, think of, because that's going to tell you, okay, so this was person was hit. And then also continuity, like, okay, so the story goes forward 3 days later. What is that bruise going to look like? Okay, so I'm going to have to age
Ah,
this bruise. And then what is that bruise going to look like 3 weeks from now? Cool. So now, okay, but then also, this is probably me even thinking deeper than a lot, but what is that bruise going to affect that character in terms of how they're going to then hold themselves, how they walk, how they talk? Let's say if you got hit in the jaw to the point where it, like, it could change your speech pattern.
mm,
It could adjust your gait. If you got, if you broke your leg, not necessarily like, to the point of like needing a prosthetic, but just like an injury. Well, now is that character going to limp? Is that character going to change their gait? Is that character going to be really wary of every time someone sneaks up on them because they're afraid that they're going to get hit again? So it totally changes how you tell the story. And people don't think that makeup artists would be that aware of it. And I'm like, well, I'm actually a biologist. I'm
right.
aware of it. I'm also a makeup artist. I can do makeup. I was taught to do makeup, and I'm more than ready to help you do that. But at my very core, I still feel like I'm a biologist first before I'm a makeup artist.
Wow. Wow. Well, I commend you on taking that MCAT. I've heard that it's not easy. I heard it's very hard.
Oh,
My little
hardest
sister,
test of my life.
yeah, my little sister, she was a bio pre-med major in undergrad, and she took that MCAT, and no, it wasn't happening. She was very good in school, but it wasn't happening. Like now she's in public health. But yeah, maybe you guys can meet one day because
Yep.
she's a biology major. I can't think of anybody else that is, but yeah, that's so cool. And you said something about you want, you know, there's those jobs that parents want their kids to get into because of money, the law and doctor, police officer. So, I mean, I'm the same way, that there's the arts, especially in Atlanta and in Georgia. The film industry's here. So, like, you're more than welcome if you're available. I usually have people who are our movers and shakers speak. I know a lot of them are virtual. I know a lot of them now are in person. Um, like at career days, because kids need to know, like, there's these other careers that you can do in
Yes.
the arts, especially here, because a lot of kids know that it's being done here, but they don't have any idea like what some of the other jobs are besides acting. Makeup artists, being a director, being a producer, being a location scout. So I like to bring those people on just to kind of share what it is they do with um, kids who may not know.
I
So,
love that. And I think that's so important and great, especially because like when we think of the film industry, we just really think of above the line people,
mhm.
which for those who don't know are going to be your executive producer, your line producer, your UPM, your actors, your director, and maybe your DOP gets above the line credit. I mean, like, it
Right,
depends on the situation. But um nobody I don't want to say nobody thinks about crew, but I feel like crew is so far down the line sometimes. And I don't blame anyone for that, but we're literally like at the end of a movie. We're at the credits. We're when people leave the theater. So they don't watch that. I commend people and I tell people all the time, please stay in your seats. Like
right,
there's
yeah.
hundreds of people that just worked on this really awesome movie for you, especially if we're talking something as big as like Marvel or Disney or HBO or Amazon or Netflix or whatever it is now. Those lists are massive. There's hundreds, if not 1,000 people overworking themselves for years. Like those Pixar movies take years to make.
Oh yeah, yes,
I want to sit and appreciate them. And I also not only want to appreciate them, but I also want to see who did that. I want
right,
to know
yeah,
who was the person that was, probably up until 3 o'clock in the morning doing a, tiny model so that another computer can come in, take a picture of it, and then put it into the movie as a digital effect. Because that's so cool to me. And I'm like, I want to know who did that. And I want to look them up and I want to praise them and I want to tell them that they're awesome. And I want to, not necessarily be their friend, but I want to at least be like, yo, you remember that time that you had to miss your kid's birthday? I know it sucked, but guess what? It looked really, really cool.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
commend you.
Yes,
Because
I'm
at the end of the day, like our jobs, they take us away from our families and our friends so much. Like, if someone comes up to me and is like, yo, what you do is really, really sweet. I'm like, thank you. I I really appreciate that because I put a lot of hard work into it and I care. I probably care too much. Some people are like, at the end of the day, it's just a paycheck. For me, sometimes depends on the project, but I at least start every project with the heart and the passion that I give everything in my life, which is a lot. I don't do anything half-assed. I'm a 100 type of person. I don't, it's like a 0 to 100. I either care or I don't. Once I don't care, then you're going to get very bare minimum. You're still going to have me show up at work every day, but if you don't respect me, I'm not going to give you the type of creativity and imaginativity. And it's not like I'm trying to hurt people. It's just like you don't value me, I don't value you.
right. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So we are going to take a break, but we'll be right back.
Son, I want you to always remember this when it comes to doing the right thing. Let nothing stop you. Sometimes you gotta make hard decisions, even break a rule or two. But as long as it's good in your heart and you're doing the right thing, let nothing stop you. Okay?
Welcome back to Conversations with Atlanta's Movers and Shakers. I am your host, Mandisa Johnson. Today, we are having a conversation with Elena Miller. So, this may be a little tricky question, but growing up, did your parents recognize your love of the arts, makeup? And if so, how did they nourish your gift to facilitate growth? I know you just said something about how you didn't know how to use makeup, but after a while, when they noticed that you were trying to do makeup, did they at least try to like help facilitate that?
Yeah. So, like I said, like my moms were very much like no makeup people. Like no makeup at all type of people. Like we had face wash and moisturizer in our house, but we weren't, there wasn't lipsticks around. Some girls are like, "Oh, I used to watch my mom do her makeup every day." That wasn't me. I didn't see that. And so I never even knew that this was an option. I didn't even know for most part like that makeup was even an option. Like I was just like my mom was always teaching me that if you're going to show up for something, you're going to show up with a clean face and your hair brushed. That was kind of the gem of information she gave me. So you know I also am very grateful because like I still have my brows. I've got very good
Right.
skin because I maybe wasn't using a bunch of things that a lot of other girls my age were when they were younger, and I wasn't plucking. So I have escaped the 90s and the 2000 early 2000 eras of skincare and makeup care, I guess. But yes, my moms have always celebrated me in terms of wanting me to pursue art in a fun way, at least as like a hobby or as an activity. Um, I was put in theater camp from the time I was 6 or 7. I started piano lessons when I was 5. I played piano for 9 years. I did ballet. I was a figure skater. I did
Wow.
gymnastics. Uh, I played the flute starting in 5th grade. And then I even was interested in the guitar for a little bit of time. So I have very much been, and I've been in choir. I've been a singer since I could talk. So I was always in choirs. I loved being in school choir. I actually, again, one of the reasons I went to St. Olaf was because they have one of the top choirs in the entire country, almost the entire world.
Wow.
Um, and I auditioned and was accepted to the freshman girls choir. my very first year. So that was an incredible accomplishment for me, because even though it is a large choir for just female women in the freshman year, not everyone made it. So there were people who did not make it. And I still feel like it was a great accomplishment to have gotten that far. I did not pursue more choir after that. And I'm very disappointed in some ways that I didn't take it more seriously after that. But again, I made this weird decision to like try and be a doctor, and I couldn't go to choir practice if I had a lab. And so it was like, ugh, what were you doing, Elena? Like, you should have been going to choir. You love to sing, you love to act, you should have been in theater more. But again, I was only in one theater production in college. I don't know, it was just a weird time. I was so determined to be a biologist and to be a doctor. But my moms were always super supportive of my theater dreams. Like I said, my mom still to this day is like, I don't understand why you got a biology degree, you should have gotten a theater and history degree. But when I pursued makeup specifically, my mom was so kind and helped me, co-sign my student loan to go out to Vancouver, which is where I attended Vancouver Film School makeup design program for film and television. And that was a huge investment. I think we put, it was like an $80,000 loan. I won't even lie. I want people to, I'm going to be transparent. It's a lot of money. And not everyone has access to that. And but I'm saying that that's not the only way to do it. You don't have to have $80,000 to be able to do what I do. There are a lot of other ways. You can use YouTube now. You can use classes. You can use onset experience. It's probably going to take you longer because the crash course, I mean, it wasn't a crash course. It was a very intense year of training that they provided. But not everyone has the time, not everyone has the money, and not everyone wants to do it that way. I did. I am the same way I went to high school and the same way I went to college. I wanted to be in an environment that was very isolated and focused, because for me, again, my ADHD needs it to be like, let's do this here and now. So when I was looking for makeup schools, I wanted somewhere that was going to have a really long program. I wanted something at least a year long. I wanted it to be every day. I didn't want to have extra days of the week where I could, make bad decisions or get distracted or just spend money I didn't have. And so I wanted to be like going back to high school. And I looked at cinema makeup school out in LA. I looked at makeup designery out in New York. And I even looked abroad. I remember there was like a program in the UK that I thought of. I did a ton of research before I made this decision. And I ultimately chose VFS because when I looked at their breakdown, it just to me seemed like the most comprehensive education that I could possibly get in a time frame that I wanted, because I also didn't want to spend a ton of time going to school again. But a year I could do. I'm like, if you care about something enough and you really want to be good at it and you want to learn the foundation of whatever you're doing, the basics, because that's what I think ultimately is the most important. It's the basics. You got to learn your basics before you can get into all this other cool stuff. And I was like, cool, let me go to VFS because I think that this will be a great way to start my career. And I remember showing my mom and telling her the price and being like, so I know you just paid for college, but now I want you to help me co-sign a loan so I can go spend another couple thousands of dollars. Okay, cool. Thanks. And I'm sure at first she probably was like, I just spent $200,000 on your 4-year college. And I was like, thank you. I'm so appreciative of that. But also, I didn't end up going to med school. So now we're going to figure out a new path. We're going to figure out a new plan. But also, I was like, at least I'm the one that's, taking the initiative. I realized that I was like, I need a job. I need a career. I want to do something cool. I didn't want to sit on my, butt and do nothing all day. So I remember I was working at Ulta and I saved up a bunch of money to attend this week-long program that VFS provides. It was like, they call it summer intensives. And so it's basically a chance for people to go to their program and just kind of do like a super crash course in a week, 5 days. That's it. And I showed my mom and I was like, can I go to Vancouver for this week? And this was back in 2017. And I was like, can I just go for a week? If I save enough money for the program, will you buy my plane ticket? And she said yes. And so I saved up money for the program, which I think was like $1,200, $1,300. And at the time, that was really hard for me because I have no impulse control and I spend money like water. And so I was like, it was a really, really big challenge. But I was like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to save money. It's like one of the only times I've ever saved money in my life. And I was like, I'm going to do this and I really want to go. So I did it. And I remember walking from Waterfront, which is like the train station, to where I was staying in Gastown, which is in Vancouver. And I remember just like seeing the mountains for the first time in the ocean. I was like, I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be here. I feel at home here. I hadn't even spoken to anyone at that point. And I was just, I could smell the fresh air and the water and the mountains, and everything about Vancouver just made me so happy. And I was like, cool. Yeah, I'm going to come back here. This is great. I want to be here. I want to be in this. Whatever this is, I want to be a part of it. And so I did my week. I met a really cool friend who I'm still in touch with. And we just had a blast. And I fell in love with character makeup. I fell in love with makeup history. I fell in love with Vancouver. And the whole entire time, I'm just like, all right, how do I get back here as fast as possible? So I basically came home from that trip and I was like, okay, cool, Mom, I'm going to need you to support me again. And I basically like gave her a PowerPoint presentation of why I wanted to be a makeup artist in the film industry. And I said, Mama, here's like reasons A through Z of why I think I should do this, why I think you should help me pay for it, and blah, blah, blah. And I just gave her a massive list of like things. And I can't remember if like she even let me get to like the fourth or fifth thing before she was like, so how do you get in? I'm like, oh,
wow.
okay. Cool. Great. I don't know, but I was just hoping you would say yes. And now that you've said yes, because I was like, I don't know why I thought that my mom would disapprove of me pursuing art when she's literally been pushing me into artistic things my entire life. But I thought that, I don't know, that my mom wanted me to be a doctor. And it's so dumb because she really didn't care. She just wanted me to be happy. She just wanted me to pursue whatever I wanted. Oh, I'm getting emotional. And it's like, she's always been so incredible, so helpful, and has always wanted what's best for me. And so she co-signed my loan and I got to go to Vancouver Film School. And I had the best year of my life. And I learned so much. I met some amazing friends, all from all over the world, because what was really cool about my class, so there's 20 kids per class is their max. We had 19 girls and one boy.
Wow.
And he was a drag queen. He was amazing. Freaking love him. His name's Cameron. He makes the most insane cool wigs. You should go check him out. If you ever need a wig, Cameron's your person.
Okay.
Boss at making wigs. And well, specifically like drag queen wigs, not just like any wig. He's got a very niche market. But anyway, he was like the balance to all of our energy and would like just, I remember one time, I think it was towards the end of the school year where they were talking about like, he was like working on a portfolio or something. And we were sitting in the lab and we are just talking about how like, you know, all this female energy has been around him. He's like, I know it's been a lot. I'm like, oh, poor Cameron. He's probably so tired of us. Like, but no, he was great. And like, honestly, we were such a good eclectic group too. I was so grateful. Shout out to MKD 35. We were pretty awesome. We didn't have a lot of drama in our class, I don't think. I mean, it could have been worse. There's always drama, especially when you got 19 girls.
Right. Yeah.
But for the most part, we were very supportive of each other. I loved hanging out with there was a huge Asian contingent in our class. We had girls from Taiwan, Korea, and mainland China, and not all of them spoke very strong English. And I've always kind of been a natural teacher. And so I remember We were studying for our first exam in makeup school, and I took it upon myself to like make sure they all understood what was really happening because it was very wordy and there was a lot of like names and dates. And I wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about. And so the best way I've been taught to do that is that if you can teach someone else, then you probably know what you're doing. So I remember one time after school, I was like, hey, do you guys like want to do some review? Like, we can just talk about everything we've learned in term one. And like, they were like, yes, please, can we do that? And I was like, yeah, of course. And so, yeah, we had like a whole study session and it was great. And I made some of my bestest, closest friends talking to two of my closest friends, Jisong and Yen. One girl's from Korea, the other one's from Taiwan. Love them to death. And I hopefully going to go and see them in the very near future. So it was just like, yeah, my mom has always been so supportive of me, and I'm so grateful that she allowed me to, I guess not even allow is the right word. I'm so happy she embraced who I already was and let me flourish because it was an incredible, incredible experience to attend Vancouver Film School. Um, and I really think that that is what set me apart and has given me so many opportunities so quickly. Because a lot of people are very surprised when I tell them like, oh, I've only been doing this for like 4 years. And they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah.
Wow.
I only picked up a makeup brush in 2018.
Well, I mean that goes to tell you that you were running away from your gift.
I
'Cause
was.
you're like
And there was
thriving.
a lot of things that were trying to stop me.
Right. Well, thank you for
I know.
sharing that. You kind of touched on your experience working with the Vancouver film industry a little bit. Do you have anything else you want to share about that experience?
Sure. I love Vancouver. I love the indie community there. I think that there's so many amazing opportunities to grow as filmmakers in Vancouver. I think that if you are a filmmaker, you should go tap into that because they are so underutilized. They are often called a service town because the American broadcasters and streamers tend to go to Vancouver to make their stuff for cheaper. The same way they do in Atlanta. They use us because we have tax credits. It's the same thing in Vancouver. They use them for tax credits. It just, that's politics. That's fine. And someday I want to have a seat at that table. But I will say that, some of the best content I've seen in my whole, short 30 years of life, specifically in the last 4 or 5, has been from original storytelling based out of Vancouver. I think that they have an incredible Indigenous storytellers. I think they have an amazing Black community of storytellers in Vancouver, which, is very small, but they have them and they're great and they're super cool. And honestly, they were so helpful. And when I told them that I was coming to Atlanta, they were like, oh, you're going to Atlanta? And I was like, yeah. They're like, that's like the Black Mecca of the world. And I'm like, okay. They're like,
Right.
you better know how to do our skin tone right. And I was like, don't worry, I got you. I made sure that was one thing I was very careful of is that I have always been as a woman of color, I've always been very aware of that. I'd never want someone to feel uncomfortable in my chair. I'd never want someone to feel like I can't color match them correctly. And specifically Black women, because I think that they have experienced far too much of that over the course of history. And so I've made it my mission to make sure that no person, man, woman, non-binary, whoever you are, I don't want you to ever worry about if I will match your skin tone. I might not get it right the first time because, skin is hard, but I'm going to make sure that you don't look ashy, chalky, yellow. I'm not going to let you go out on camera looking crazy. And I don't want them to feel like they can't ever speak up. And if I do ever have someone that says like, hey, can you fix something? I want to be like, of course, let me help you. Let's do this together. Because at the end of the day, it's their face on camera. And I want them to feel good about it. Because there's a bunch of actors too that don't ever watch themselves back, which, everyone has their reasons for doing that. But, if someone's going to watch themselves back, at least I don't want them to be distracted by the makeup.
Right. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for knowing how to do our makeup because there was a photo shoot I did some years ago, 2015, I think. And it was by a Black girl. And I was like, I look awfully yellow. and I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
yellow undertone. I have more like a reddish undertone. And I was just like, I'm not sharing these pictures
Yeah.
because the same, you know how you just said they didn't want to watch themselves back. That I was like, I'm not sharing any of these because this is not it. I was like, I don't even have a yellow
Mhm.
undertone. I have a red undertone. Like, what are you doing? So, yes. So, what was the deciding factor to relocate to Atlanta to work in the film industry here?
So I honestly, as much as I love Vancouver, the diversity is lacking. I've also grown up in Minnesota where the diversity was lacking. Now, I should say that very carefully because I think that there are a lot of diverse communities in both of those places, but they weren't my people and they didn't feel like I was being either accepted by them or I wasn't finding them. Or when I would find them, they still would alienate me. And I was feeling very, very frustrated. And that's a whole nother identity crisis conversation to have. But the reason that I wanted to do Atlanta was also because I knew that the type of people here would be people that I had never encountered to be mean or, rude or just like, I was just like, everyone says the South is like, got that Southern charm. And there was a long period of time where I was like, I can't go live in the South. I can't live. My mom even told me, she's like, don't go live anywhere below the Mason Dixon line. They think differently down there. And I'm like, I get that. However, when Georgia was flipped blue in the 2020 election, um, I was like, oh, so maybe I could live down there. Um, and I do know for a fact, obviously, that most of the state is still red and that the cities are blue, but that's everywhere. So I was like, I mean, even Minnesota is like was a purple state for a little bit. Um, and I don't mean to make this an entire politics chat, but being raised by lesbians and just being a brown person who grew up in the Midwest, it's not like I'm trying to be political. I'm just, my whole life has been political, kind of,
Mhm.
because people have always had a reaction when I tell them I was raised by lesbians. And it can always have a conversation. So that's a whole nother thing, is like whether or not I decide to tell them that is dictated, who my friends are. But when I came to the South, I was very like, okay, what do I feel safe here? Yes. Are there people who look like me? Yes. Are there more people who look like me and less like people who I grew up with? Yes. So let's try this. Let's see if this is going to be a safe place for me to be as a Latina woman and as a woman of lesbians. Um, and so I was a little worried at first being in the South, but my husband also happened to get a job that is based here. And so he could, I mean, he's fully remote, but he, happened to have the headquarters were based here. And I was like, okay, well, that's really nice. Like that. And then I've also never had a desire to move to LA. um, Everyone's like, go to LA. You're gonna like love LA. And I'm like, with what money? Like, how? Um, there's like, I understand there's a lot of money to be made in LA, but we're not the ones making it. And
Mm-mm.
so that's a whole different issue. But no, I don't have that, you know, Kardashian level of status to fall back upon. And so I couldn't do it. And I also just, the type of the energy that I've always felt from LA people, and I don't mean to gloss over them all. Some of them are wonderful humans, and I love my LA artists, but I have definitely met some people that have come to Atlanta and thought themselves to be better than us because they live in a different area code.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's the exact same. Yeah.
And I'm just like, as someone like me who was an adopted individual, who I grew up in Minnesota, so I was born in Lima, Peru, and I was adopted. Just that simple, one little relocation where you were born and then where you live obviously will set you up for so many different opportunities, but those are pretty much when you're a child, you don't pick those things. So
Uh-huh.
yes, you may have grown up in LA, you may have lived in LA, but you didn't choose that. Your parents did. which is great for you, depending on like what part of LA you lived in too, because I know LA's got a bunch of problems,
Oh
but
yeah.
so does everywhere.
Right.
So I was like, I don't really want to be around that type of energy yet. I'm not ready in my journey to deal with that yet. I have a lot of other things that I need to work on myself before I put myself in a place like LA. I also, at that point too, I was like right out of makeup school, and I was like, I am already feeling like a little fish in a big pond. If I go to LA, I'm gonna be a microorganism in a massive ocean. Like, no one's gonna want to work with me. I have no experience, I have no connections. I'm gonna be like every other dime a dozen makeup artist on the street. Now, I did have my biology degree, so I could have set myself apart that way there, but I also was just like, let me just work my way up,
Mhm.
take my natural steps, and not get too overwhelmed. um I have so much respect for people who go to LA and make it. I think that 706 is an amazing union for the makeup and hairstylists that live out there. As far as I know, I'm sure there's stuff that happens behind closed doors, but um, I don't want to like hate on LA, but for me and my journey, LA wasn't where I needed to be, and Atlanta has always seemed far more like home to me, um, despite the chaotic drivers and despite
Right. Yeah.
a lot of the gun laws are insane to me. And there's still things about Atlanta and Georgia as a whole that I'm like, but I have, been careful, and I've lived the way that I've always lived. I've moved the way I've always moved. And, obviously been aware of my surroundings and not, done stupid things. And so I'm just, hoping the universe has in store for me and keeps me safe. And in that regard, I've loved Atlanta, and I don't see any reason to be afraid of Atlanta. There's so many people that are like, you live in the South, you live in Atlanta, isn't it dangerous there? And I'm like, aren't you in Minneapolis? Do you not remember what happened like a year ago? Remember the whole George Floyd
Right.
situation? Like, that was like 2 miles from my mom's house. Like,
Mm.
you're telling me, and they're like, oh, I know. It's bad. That's why we moved to the suburbs. And I was like, oh, okay. So
But you're
you're just
still
living.
in Minnesota.
Yeah, you're still in Minnesota. Like, I don't know. That to me, it's like, I was just in Minnesota for Christmas, and literally every time I go back now, I'm like, ugh, why did I live here? It's so cold.
Oh
And
my
I'm like,
gosh. Yeah.
it's so cold. It's in the snow and the ice, and like I felt like it was really funny. I had a moment where I was like, I felt like the Jamaican bobsled team going to Calgary during
Right.
Cool Running, and I was like, snow and cold and ice. I was like, Sanka. I was like, it was bad, and I was like, why did I live here for so long?
Right,
God,
right.
I
Yeah,
don't like the cold.
I'm from Ohio, so I can relate. I can so
Yes.
relate. Even when like it was cold before Christmas and I was like, it's so cold here, like snow is missing. Like what is going on? I didn't move down here for this. So every
No,
time,
I know.
I'm like my husband is like, we could always move up to Ohio. I'm like, you really don't want to. I was like, "You really do not want to." I was like, "It can be -5 one day, and then a few days later, it could be 70, and it'll be, like, snow on the ground, but that snow would be dirty, and then it'll be 70 degrees, and you're like, 'What the heck? Why
Yeah.
why? Why?'" So, yeah, I can totally relate to what you just said about that.
All of us Midwest people, we just, the Midwest is great for a lot of reasons. And I think that especially Minneapolis is still kind of a hidden gem, although now I'm exposing it. Um, it's a great place to grow up. I would love to have a family in, Minnesota. I'm so grateful I did have the childhood I did. However, I just, you know, I enjoy seeing the sun. I enjoy being warm. I enjoy
Yeah.
living in a place that's also closer to my birth family in Peru. I can take a 7-hour flight, down to Lima, and I don't have to, transfer. It's a direct flight. I can get there in a day.
Wow.
So it's it's been a really big blessing to live in Atlanta, and I think that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I'm so happy.
Wow. So, what are some relocation tips you would have for someone looking to relocate here to Atlanta?
Yeah, so I actually had a friend who is a makeup artist in Minnesota who wants to come down here, a couple friends actually, and I'm telling them, I'm like, girl, get here, because also the rent's going up, so get here soon. And
Right.
everyone says, don't. Everyone's like, come to Atlanta, and then they're also like, we're full, don't come. Like these traffic, these roads, they're not ready. These potholes, they're not ready.
Oh gosh.
It's so bad. So, someone wants to relocate, I would honestly have them reach out to me. Especially if you're a makeup artist. I have friends now that help me relocate. One of the department heads in this area, she was incredibly helpful. Her name's Kim Jones. She's also a huge part of Local 798, and she literally gave me a name of her realtor, and she said, this woman will help you. And my husband and I bought a house for me, sight unseen. I didn't literally step in this residence until I moved into it. And because we were looking for something when I was moving from Vancouver, and it was like a 6-week process maybe, and it was very fast, and it worked really, really well for us. I know that that's not always the case. I know everyone has different budgets and locations that they want. Obviously, I would say if you're going to work in the film industry, try to get as centrally located as possible, which is hard because it's most expensive.
Oh gosh,
But
yes. Yeah.
if you can live, in the Midtown, Buckhead, Piedmont Heights, Inwood, Inman Park, Edgewood, Old Fourth Ward type of neighborhood, I would recommend it, just because I know from even just the last 2 years of working here, I guess it hasn't even been 2 years, like a year and a half of working here, I have had to drive to Macon, Madison, Fayetteville, Noonan, pretty long distances to work, to film. And it would just be a heck of a drive to do that if you're living up in, even Sandy Springs or Vinings or, Alpharetta. God forbid you're living up in Alpharetta and trying to make a drive to Fayetteville every day. That's not going to happen.
No.
You're going to be in the car for like 6 hours a day. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then, those are the 6 hours of your turnaround. So when are you sleeping? So I don't know. I hope you're not driving and, falling asleep at the wheel, but people do. And that's how people die. So don't do that. I think sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to live so close to the city, it's dangerous, or I don't want to live so close to the city, it's too expensive. But what you don't spend in money on your house, you're going to spend in time later. And people don't get that. And for me and my husband, we played a lot more so that I don't have to drive the car as much. And for me, that was worth it.
What side of town are you on?
We are in the Piedmont Heights neighborhood. So we are south of Buckhead and north of Midtown.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I couldn't agree anymore. Our kids go to school in Decatur City, and we used to live in Conyers.
Oof.
That was crazy.
Oh
Plus,
my
our
God.
son was in the marching band, so we would all go to school. And at the time, we were in Conyers. We were at 5 different schools. Yeah, including me. I was working at one, all in the area, but 5 different schools. I would be the last one to be picked up from work for work. We would go back home, but my husband would come all the way back out here to pick up my son at around 10 o'clock for marching band practice. 2019, September 2019, literally like right before the pandemic, we were like, okay, that's enough. So now we are like minutes away from downtown Decatur. And we're like everywhere. Like if we want to go to Buckhead, we don't even need to get on the highway. So I agree with you on that. You'll spend a little bit more money, but if you're working in the film industry, a lot of things are filmed out here. Like there were things filmed. Of course, Raising Dion was filmed out here in a lot of different locations. And then there used to be, a little Kroger, and across the street, they used to, from time to time, there's always like, what are those trailers are set up? You can see like what is that?
Base camp.
Yes, base camp is set up in the parking lot right across the street from there. So you're absolutely right, because you will spend a lot of time in the car. And that was my fear I was like, we are going to be living literally in our car. And it was true because we were always like Conyers and out here and then back to Conyers. And it was a lot of wear and tear on our car. Like now we basically go 2 miles a
And
day.
gas money, oh my God.
Yeah.
When gas prices were up too, that was insane. I had a bunch of friends in the film industry were like, cool. So we can't even afford to drive, much less our rent now. And I was like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
well, why are y'all living so far away? You live in Lawrenceville, you live in Douglasville, you live in whatever ville is over the billing. Like I couldn't, but also I do understand, like that's speaking from a very high place of privilege. So I
Mhm.
get it. I
Right.
gotta check myself every now and then and be like, Elena, not everyone has, X amount of dollars to put a down payment on a mortgage. So, check yourself. Okay, I'm humble. But also I'm like, I did the thing where, I lived in Vancouver. There was times where I had $1.37 in my checking account and I was eating rice and pasta and eggs for weeks. I wanted this job in this life so badly that I was willing to do that. And I was living in a basement suite and I was sharing it with, the daughter of the house owner. And it was amazing because we bonded and like the whole experience was great. But, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do to make it. And so I did.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we are going to take a break, but we'll be right back.
Son, I want you to always remember this when it comes to doing the right thing. Let nothing stop you. Sometimes you gotta make hard decisions, even break a rule or two. But as long as it's good in your heart and you're doing the right thing, let nothing stop you. Okay?
Welcome back to Conversations with Atlanta Movers and Shakers. I am your host, Mandisa Johnson. Today we are having a conversation with Elena Miller. I saw on your resume that you attended Vancouver Film School for their full-time makeup design for film and television, which you already said anyway. Would you recommend someone coming out of high school to attend a program like yours?
That's a good question and really tricky too, because when I went, I was 26. And
Mhm.
so I had already gone to university. I had already lived a little bit on my own. I had moved in with my boyfriend, now my husband, and we had our own apartment. And so I had some life skills. And what I thought was really interesting was when I went to this program, it is an 18 plus program. So you have to have a high school diploma to attend VFS. Um, but we had a very wide range of people that went to that school, that were even in my class. So I had some girls that were 19. There were some girls that were 25, some girls that were 27. And I think there was the oldest girl in our class at the time was in her 30s. I think she was 30, 31. And so we had about a 10 to 12 year range. The level of maturity and the ability to do well in that class was very apparent based
Mhm.
on people's age. And it wasn't necessarily whether or not they were smart or not. It was just a prioritizing of needs. And people who went to college, I think we have just an ability to know how to study better, because if you went to a certain high school, maybe your high school didn't focus on test taking, or maybe your high school just was not a great high school and it didn't, have great teachers, and so you just never learned how to study or something like that. Your expectations were different from you. A lot of people could coast through high school. I was not one of those people who could coast through high school. I struggled in high school. So I knew that makeup school was going to be hard, and I set myself up for that. And so I was ready to study hard. I was also 27 or 26. And so I had a little bit more life experience than a lot of my classmates.
Mhm.
Um, I think it would be a hard thing to do right out of high school. I think that the people who did do it right out of high school, I'm very impressed with how far they've come. None of them in my class went right into the film industry. They all are doing something different.
Mm.
And I think that that's not to say you couldn't go straight into makeup school and then keep pursuing your passion. I think I do have another friend though. She is, in her I think she's only 20, 21. Yeah, she's 21. She did do that. She maybe she took like 1 year out or 2 years, but she went pretty much right from high school into makeup. And she's doing great, but she's also in a situation where she's like, well, do I move to Atlanta? Do I stay with my boyfriend? Do
Mm.
I, she's also in that phase of her life, which is fine. Although, you know, I would always tell people I'm the worst. I'm like, break up with your boyfriend, come to Atlanta. I did that to one of my other friends in Vancouver too. Like the first day I met her, I was like, so tell me your life. And she did. And I was like, cool, break up with your boyfriend, move to Vancouver. She did. And she's doing so well now. And she has a whole new boyfriend and he's great. And we're so happy for her. So
Okay.
I'm so happy to do that, because one thing I will say, don't let anyone hold you back.
Mm-hmm.
If you want something, go for it. Be passionate. Take the reins. Don't let anyone stop you. I mean, I was with a guy who's now my husband, and I left him. I literally said, I was like, so I'm going to go to Vancouver to makeup school. If you want to keep dating, we can do that, but I'm going to go. And so he was like, okay, well, I don't want to break up with you. So yeah, I guess we could do that. And then like a year, or like while I was in makeup school, he proposed.
Oh
So,
wow.
and now we're married. But
Wow.
anyways, that was a random ass way of, but I feel like life has a lot to do with like whether or not people are ready. And different choices. I have some friends in that went to makeup school that, they did makeup school and then they went right back to their hometowns and like aren't doing film as much. They're still doing makeup, but they're not doing film as much, which is fine. Everyone's got their own path. But I know that they want to do film. And I'm like, you need to move to a place that does film if you want to do film. But
Yes.
they don't want to leave hometowns because their husband or their partner or their boyfriend or whoever is doing their passion and their love in that place. So that's where it's like, you got to find the balance and you got to find what you're willing to sacrifice. So do I think that high school students can do this? Absolutely. Absolutely. Would I encourage them to get some life skills before they go? Absolutely. I think that being on your own and learning how to cook for yourself, do your own laundry, make a shopping list. These are things I still.